Warning: the following story is said to be cursed. If you are prone to bad energy, please click away now. You have been warned. Enjoy.
In the small town of Hollowbrook, nestled amidst the rolling hills of New England, there stood an old cemetery known as Hollowbrook Cemetery. The job of the overnight groundskeeper had always been one of solitude and contemplation, and it was to this position that George Thornton was appointed. George, a solitary man by nature, had lived a life of quiet seclusion. When he accepted the role of overnight groundskeeper, he anticipated a peaceful existence amongst the graves and the whispering trees. However, what he did not anticipate were the unsettling events that would soon engulf his life. Hollowbrook Cemetery, with its time-worn tombstones and shadowy mausoleums, was a place where the boundary between the living and the dead seemed to blur. It was a place steeped in history, and many stories and legends of the town were buried within its grounds. George's first few weeks at Hollowbrook Cemetery passed without incident. He would spend his nights patrolling the quiet paths, tending to the graves, and maintaining the grounds. But as the nights grew longer and colder, he began to experience inexplicable occurrences that sent shivers down his spine. One moonless night, George heard faint whispers carried by the wind. The voices seemed to emanate from the older section of the graveyard, a part of the cemetery that held the remains of the town's earliest settlers. Intrigued and a little unnerved, he followed the sounds, his flashlight slicing through the inky darkness. The whispers grew louder as he approached an ancient mausoleum. Its stone door stood slightly ajar, and the cryptic voices resonated from within. George's heart raced as he pushed the door open, revealing a chamber bathed in flickering candlelight. In the center of the chamber, an old leather-bound book lay open on a stone pedestal. The pages turned as if by an invisible hand, revealing eerie symbols and arcane writings. George's breath quickened as he watched in terror. Despite the unsettling sight before him, George couldn't resist the urge to approach the open book. The pages were filled with cryptic symbols and intricate drawings, a language he couldn't comprehend. As he reached out to touch the pages, a cold gust of wind extinguished the candles, plunging the chamber into darkness. Panic surged through George as he fumbled for his flashlight. When the beam of light pierced the darkness, he found himself alone in the mausoleum, the book closed and untouched. Had it all been a hallucination, or was the cemetery playing tricks on his mind? Haunted by the encounter, George returned to the caretaker's cottage for the night, unable to shake the feeling that something malevolent lurked within Hollowbrook Cemetery. As the days turned into weeks, George's nights became increasingly restless. He would wake in a cold sweat, tormented by nightmares of shadowy figures and eerie voices that whispered incomprehensible secrets. The once peaceful cemetery now felt like a foreboding maze of darkness and despair. One particularly harrowing night, as George patrolled the cemetery, he encountered a spectral figure. It appeared to be a woman in a flowing gown, her hair disheveled and her eyes hollow. She reached out to him with translucent hands, her voice a mournful plea. "Help me," she implored, her voice a haunting whisper. "They won't let me rest." Before George could react, the apparition dissolved into thin air, leaving behind a lingering chill that seeped into his bones. As the paranormal activity escalated, George's once steady demeanor began to unravel. He heard footsteps echoing through the cottage when he knew he was alone. The whispers in the night grew louder and more insistent, as though trying to communicate with him. Desperate for answers, George began researching the history of Hollowbrook Cemetery. He discovered that the graveyard had a dark past, marred by tales of unexplained deaths, curses, and unsolved mysteries. The spectral figure he had encountered appeared to be one of many restless souls who sought to reveal the cemetery's secrets. Armed with his newfound knowledge, George decided to confront the paranormal activity head-on. He returned to the ancient mausoleum where he had first encountered the eerie book. This time, he brought with him candles, incense, and an old journal filled with notes about the cemetery's history. As he lit the candles and began reciting incantations, a chilling wind swept through the chamber. The flickering flames cast eerie shadows on the walls, and the room seemed to come alive with spectral energy. The apparitions of the restless souls manifested around him, their eyes filled with longing and despair. They whispered in unison, their voices an otherworldly chorus. George listened in horror as they recounted tales of injustice, betrayal, and a malevolent presence that had tormented them for centuries. In a final act of desperation, George beseeched the spirits to reveal the identity of the malevolent force that had plagued the cemetery. As he uttered the words of the incantation, a deafening roar filled the chamber, and the apparitions turned their spectral gazes toward a shadowy corner of the room. From the darkness emerged a sinister presence, a shadowy figure with glowing, malevolent eyes. It whispered words of darkness and hatred, its power overwhelming. The spirits converged upon the figure, their spectral forms twisting and contorting as they fought to banish it. But the malevolent presence was too strong, and it lashed out with a terrible force. The room shook with a deafening explosion, and George was consumed by a blinding light. When the light dissipated, the mausoleum lay in ruins, and George's lifeless body lay among the rubble. The malevolent force had claimed another victim, leaving a shattered, cursed cemetery along with the restless spirits who continue to haunt its grounds. Hollowbrook Cemetery remains a place of darkness and despair, its secrets buried again with George and the countless souls who had met their tragic ends within its confines. The town of Hollowbrook will forever be haunted by the chilling tale of the groundskeeper who had dared to confront the malevolent force that lurked in the shadows, only to meet a horrific end.
Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more stories like these, please subscribe. Thank you.